Music by explosions in the sky. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman as we continue in this conversation with an American contractor, a Navy veteran, who was held by U.S. military at Camp Cropper in Iraq for more than 3 months. There he was subjected to extreme cold, to interrogation, to what the U.S. military has called enhanced interrogation techniques. Donald Vance, our guest, also Andrea Prasow, senior counsel in the Terrorism and Counterterrorism Program at Human Rights Watch. Talk about the significance, Andrea Prasow, of this case and the fact that a federal court on Monday allowed this case to move forward, suing Donald Rumsfeld.
I do think this case is incredibly significant because the allegations that have been set forward in this complaint by Mr. Vance and his co-plaintiff really demonstrate the significant role that former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld played in personally authorizing the torture not only of the plaintiffs, as they allege, but of hundreds, if not thousands, of other detainees in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Guantanamo.
The Obama administration's declared waterboarding a form of torture and banned its use since taking office, but has not prosecuted any Bush administration officials to date. Shortly after he took office, Obama was asked if he supported prosecutions for Bush-era torture.
Nobody's above the law, and if there are clear instances of wrongdoing, that people should be prosecuted just like any ordinary citizen. But that, generally speaking, I'm more interested in looking forward than I am in looking backwards.
That was President Obama in 2009. Andrea Prasow, your comments on looking forward, not backwards. Also, I want to ask Donald Vance that same question.
You know, I think it's impossible to look forward without first looking backwards and trying to understand the full scope of what did happen and why it happened. And until that happens, there's no guarantee that it won't happen again.
Attorneys for Donald Rumsfeld have harshly criticized the court ruling. This is the statement from attorney David Rifkin, quote, "Having judges second-guess the decisions made by the armed forces halfway around the world is no way to wage a war. It saps the effectiveness of the military, puts American soldiers at risk, and shackles federal officials who have a constitutional duty to protect America." Andrea Prasow.
Torturing detainees is no way to wage a war either. And the idea that the fact that the U.S. feels it's engaged in a war should insulate it from liability for torturing people, I think is really outrageous. That's not the way the constitutional structure suggests that people should be held accountable. It's not what international law says. The law is very clear. The U.S. is a signatory to the Convention Against Torture, and that means it has an obligation to investigate claims of torture and to prosecute people who it believes have committed torture.
Donald Vance, your response to President Obama said we should look forward, not backward, not referring directly to your case, and also what Rumsfeld lawyer has said.
I'm not going to comment on Mr. Rifkin's comments. I'm not an expert in military matters, but as far as President Obama's comments that he's not prepared to look back and he just wants to look forward, what I have to say to that is we have absolutely no alternative. I'm under the absolute firm belief that these programs are still ongoing.
Why do you believe that, Donald?
As I've previously said, I have enough evidence of what I've heard and have seen that in Camp Cropper, to this very date, there could quite possibly be Americans being detained. And I also believe that this has actually happened to other Americans who just, quite frankly, just haven't come forward yet.
Why do you believe Americans are being detained now at Camp Cropper?
You know the guards and the interrogators. Camp Cropper is not a very large compound, so they're used to interacting with Iraqis who have a very rudimentary understanding of English. Whereas myself and my colleague, English is our first language, so we can hear them in the hallways saying things, or you might hear the interrogation room next to you. And they speak quite frankly to each other about what's going on tomorrow, what's the current ongoings on at the camp, and you hear some pretty frightening things happening. now that I've come home and we've filed this lawsuit, and now we've had a John Doe come forward, and he has also now filed a lawsuit. It just once again supports my theory that there are other Americans this has happened to.
Donald, what's the long-term effects of what happened to you in Iraq?
To this day, I haven't sought any professional care. I don't know if I'm experiencing any sort of residual effects. I'm not a doctor. I want to say that I have sort of bouts of stress because of what happened to me, but I think it's just a choice that I've made to not speak to someone. I try not to take myself to that place anymore.
Andrea Prasow, can you talk about the significance of the decision to allow the case to move forward 1 week after another judge ruled in another lawsuit that it could move forward against Donald Rumsfeld? Is there a shift taking place?
I hope so. Now, the reality is both of these cases that are proceeding have been brought by U.S. citizens, and the fact that they were brought by U.S. citizens was considered quite important to both courts. Now, I don't think that's entirely relevant, but at this point, it is only cases by U.S. citizens that are proceeding. But, you know, in Mr. Vance's case, the Seventh Circuit was quite clear that in examining whether there was a violation of his constitutional rights, the standard was whether the conduct shocks the conscience. And I think it's clear that the torture of a U.S. citizen by the U.S. military shocks the conscience of the ordinary American. But I hope that the torture of a non-U.S. citizen by the U.S. military also shocks the conscience of an ordinary American, and that those cases at some point will be allowed to proceed.
Well, I want to thank you both very much for being with us. With a final question to Andrea Prasow, what message do you think this sends to whistleblowers in Iraq and Afghanistan, around the world today?
That's a difficult question. I certainly hope that it doesn't deter anyone from coming forward with allegations of misconduct or illegal behavior. And I do think that the president's rejection of torture and his executive order that closed the CIA prisons as soon as he took office, I think those were very incredibly important statements about U.S. policy going forward. But as I said before, the U.S. can't move forward completely without looking backwards, without examining what happened in the past, why it happened, and holding people accountable.
And Donald Vance, would you recommend to other whistleblowers that they should move forward, that they should blow the whistle as you did, considering what happened to you, even though before you were arrested, you were in daily touch with the FBI?
Absolutely. I am imploring any civilian operating in any war zone or anywhere in the world to absolutely, if you're seeing something illegal happening, please talk to the authorities and come forward. I mean, we don't have a long history of doing our very best at protecting our whistleblowers, but to this very day, I'm actually glad that what I did, and I would do it again.
Donald Vance, I want to thank you for being with us. Navy vet, contractor turned whistleblower, detained without charge, suing Donald Rumsfeld. The case is moving forward. Andrea Prasow, and Senior Counsel on Terrorism and Counterterrorism Program at Human Rights Watch. Thanks for being with us. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. As we turn now to what's happening in the United States, if you happen to call the telecommunications company Verizon today, you may hear a message that sounds like this.
Thanks for calling Verizon. You can now reach us at 1-800-VERIZON for all of your needs. Please be advised, due to a strike, you may experience significant delays in having your call answered. Visit us on the web at Verizon.com, or I will be glad to help you in our automated system.
45,000 workers at Verizon have entered their fifth day on strike in what's been described as the nation's largest strike in 4 years. The strike was called after negotiations broke down between Verizon and two unions representing the workers, Communication Workers of America and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Verizon was attempting to cut health and pension benefits for workers and make it easier for the company to fire workers. The workers on strike are employed in Verizon's fixed-line division, covering landline phones, DSL internet, Fios cable, TV, and internet. Workers at Verizon Wireless are not unionized. Verizon says the benefit cuts are needed because its wireline business has been in decline for more than a decade as more people switched to using cell phones exclusively. But union officials have rejected Verizon's argument. As the nation's second-largest U.S. phone carrier, Verizon earned $6.9 billion in net income for the first 6 months of the year. Verizon's outgoing CEO, Ivan Seidenberg, earned more than $18 million in total compensation in 2010, roughly $49,000 a day. Democracy Now!'s Jessel Noor spoke to some striking workers at a Verizon picket line in Manhattan on Wednesday.
My name is Peter D'Esposito. I've been with Verizon for 32 years. We're here today because we were on strike against the Verizon Corporation. We've been negotiating a contract since June 22nd. Our contract went up Sunday at midnight, and unfortunately, there's been no movement in the contract. That's why we're here. Our demands are to hold on to what we worked for the last 50 years, and what I mean by that are medical benefits, our pensions, our job security, local issues like transfers.
I just want everybody to know that don't believe everything that you hear. Verizon is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They could afford to pay us for years to come and not feel it. This is just an example of corporate greed, and my question is, how much is enough? When is it enough?
Well, what we're really striking for is because we need to keep jobs in the U.S. We need to stimulate our economy. The working class, the middle class families are the families that are suffering. And without them, then that means that the U.S. is going to be taking a downward spiral. And what we need to realize is that this does not just affect us here at Verizon, CWA, and IBEW. This affects all unions. Because once one union is taken down, then they're going to go after all the other unions.
If we strike Verizon and win, it can give confidence to people throughout this country that they can also take on their bosses, whether it be a government job or whether it be in the private sector, and also win. Instead of us being brought down to where everybody else is, making peanuts and having benefits you have to pay into, if benefits at all, that everybody else should learn from us, take on their employer, and fight for the things that we all deserve.
Some of the Verizon workers who are on strike. To talk more about the strike, we're joined by two guests. Bob Master is a spokesperson for Communication Workers of America, and Pamela Galpern is a striking Verizon worker and union activist. We did invite Verizon to join us on the program, but a company spokesperson declined our invitation. Bob Master, lay out this strike, how significant it is in the country today.
Well, I think that the workers that you had on, the last few minutes really explained it extremely well. This really represents everything that's gone wrong in this country today, where the richest are trying to make the working class and the middle class pay the price of, whatever is happening. And the truth of the matter is, this is a corporation that made $22.5 billion over the last 4 years, paid its top 5 executives $250 million, and yet they want to strip workers of retirement security, health security, employment security, cut benefits for workers who get hurt on the job, cut paid sick leave. It's just wrong. It's not the way we should be going.
Well, we did invite Verizon on the show. They declined our invitation. But on Verizon's website, they write, profits from Verizon's wireline business have declined dramatically due to increased consumer demand for wireless and Internet-based communication services. Today, Verizon spends $4 billion annually on employee health care, and certain representatives of CWA's described middle-class workforce earn a total of $140,000 annually in total compensation and benefits. Faced with these realities, the company must make changes to its cost structure to remain competitive. Bob.
First of all, one thing people should know is that there are actually 70 technicians who work for Verizon Wireless who are actually also on strike. And in light of Verizon's logic, we don't see Verizon offering